Welcome to the panel discussion on the ABCs of care in the online classroom. I am Dr. Dan Augusto. I am co-facilitator with Dr. Colin Fair. We're both faculty members in UAGC's Department of Behavioral Sciences. My apologies, I saw somebody raise their hand and then I realized it was Colin, so sorry about that. So in this session, the panelists are here to share strategies for interacting with students in the online classroom under the Culture of Care initiative. The panelists developed an ABC strategy for interacting with students. It promotes authenticity, being there, and connection. They're going to share their experiences with you during this panel discussion. So Dr. Darla Branda serves as the program chair and associate professor in the Bachelor of Science in Health Information Management program here at UAGC. Dr. Christopher Foster is program chair over philosophy in the School of General Studies. Dr. Yolanda Harper is a professor in the College of Arts and Sciences at UAGC. And Dr. Holly Lopez serves as program chair here at UAGC in the Department of Education for 2 bachelor's programs. So with that, let's get started. So I'm going to be asking the questions and they're going to be answered. So the first question is for Chris and Holly. So Chris and Holly, from your perspective, can you share a few of the key components of instructor authenticity?
Hi, thank you. Yes, I wanted to start by sharing a little slide, if you don't mind. And let's go to slide share. Okay, screen share. Whoops, wrong slide. Okay, there we go. Can you see that? Great.
Yes.
Okay. I want to talk about my dear friend, Clifford Blizzard, who, if you don't know, passed away a few weeks ago. But in his life was the greatest colleague I've ever known and one of the greatest human beings I've ever known. And he was actually going to present at this Culture of Care summit. And I can think of nobody better to have done so. So I'm sort of presenting in his stead, sort of a tribute to Clifford, you know, and honoring him and his legacy of care. And I'd like to just share a couple examples from Clifford's life and his legacy of care, because there's nobody I knew that cared more, especially when it comes to the trait of authenticity. Clifford visited me, and I visited him a couple times. He visited here in Salt Lake City, you know, about 4 different times, and we had wonderful times. And during these wonderful times, I remember, like, you know, planning activities and events, and Clifford saying, well, I can't do that thing at that time. I can't go to that. And I was like, well, why can't you? Aren't you on vacation or something? And he's like, well, I have scheduled phone calls with my students at that time. And I remember at first thinking, wait a minute, you know, you're on break, you're on a trip, you're on a, you know, can't that wait? Can you pick another? And to him, that was sacred. He had scheduled phone calls with his students, and he called every single student in his class at that time. And to hear him talk, you know, just he's in the other room or even in the car, and to him it was joy. It wasn't work. He didn't have some slated list of obligatory commitment. He was just connecting with them as humans. The authenticity was so real, but not just authenticity, but joy. Right? He enjoyed it. This was to him his passion. And I'm a philosopher, so I have a couple things to say, sort of philosophically about authenticity, right? There's that quote, you know, sincerity is the key. So if you can fake that, you've got it made. I think that was Groucho Marx that said that. Clifford wasn't faking it. I have this friend named Dave Jenkins, and he has this quote. He says, the best way to make someone think you like them? It's to actually like them. And I believe that people can feel it, right? I believe that people can feel the difference. And Clifford embodied that. And that's how I knew he liked me. And that's how I knew, and that's how he knew I liked him, because you can feel it in your heart. And Clifford, he was a self-exploiter in the sense that he did way more than any single human being should be expected to do. But he did it because it was his love and his joy. So I think the starting point for Culture of Care is actual care and actual love. And then it's for him, it was not work. It was life. So thank you. Thanks, person.
Thanks so much, Chris. Thanks for sharing that. And I would love to piggyback on that with this idea that genuine empathy with your students in the online setting is so critical, something that Clifford definitely had. Research is showing that genuine empathy is leading to students being more successful, more interactive. They're just more successful in the class. But we don't need research to tell us that in order for us to be genuinely empathic, it's going to look different for every teacher. It's going to look different for your group of students, your context, and maybe even your discipline. So, for instance, I think it gets a bit of a misnomer, this idea of empathy in the online classroom. People think, oh, I need to be sort of this fairy godmother, Glinda the Good Witch, right? And that doesn't necessarily ring true for certain people, doesn't ring true for my own personality. So what genuine empathy looks like is going to be very different based on you, right? On the genuine person that you are. And so part of teaching in an online classroom is developing that perspective about yourself and showing that in a genuine way. The context is so different. I work a lot with teachers who are working with preschool children, right? And that context, generally these are women who are the sandwich generation. So they have people at home that they're caregiving for, that they're raising, but also people that they may be caring for that are older adults, right? So I'm really thinking about the context and what my students are needing, what this particular set of students are needing. They're going into a preschool classroom every day. They are coming home and caregiving at night, right? They need me to also be caregiving. And I'm going to approach differently when I'm working with someone who's in the military and maybe they're on base, right? I'm going to be more flexible. I'm going to meet their needs in a wholly different way. They need efficient information and they need flexibility and support in a way that's going to fit their particular context. And to me, that really is the joy of online teaching. It really keeps you on your toes. The other thing I want to share is just that we remember to focus on the learning. It's about the learning. It's not about the being late or being on time. There may be timeliness components as a part of an assignment, but the goal is for us as educators is to teach and for us to increase students' content knowledge. And for us to do that, we need to focus on the content and less so on the timeliness. And I think this is hard for a lot of people to grasp because most of us were raised in a brick and mortar setting, right? And timeliness is a critical issue. It's a hot topic, and it brings up a lot of feelings for many people. But if we focus on the content, on the knowledge, on the learning, that really is our job as educators. And overall, our goal is really to move away from this brick and mortar practices and these policies, which are very ingrained in many of us, right? Because we are educators, and education really was a platform for not only our career, but our passion for lifelong learning. But we have this amazing opportunity to move away from this brick and mortar sort of policies and practices and create something that is wholly new and is going to help revolutionize online learning so that students can be successful.
Thank you for those responses. Question 2 is for Dr. Harper, Yolanda. Some faculty are concerned that cultural care is a one-size-fits-all mandate for faculty behaviors. What is your response to that, and how does it relate to authenticity?
Thank you, Dan. Underscoring authenticity is the pillar of respect. We engage respectfully in every interaction, recognizing the inherent value of diverse perspectives. The pillar communicate includes we value diverse perspectives. The pillar advocate includes advocating for the inclusion of diverse voices in every department. So one size fits all interpretations of culture care are counterproductive to the mission of fostering a community grounded in trust and belonging. Culture of Care recognizes that each of our students is a unique individual who is connected to our university and to a variety of other social systems in distinctive ways. And life is dynamic, as Holly illustrated in her talking points. And as John Denver's saying, some days are diamonds, some days are stone. And so the joys and challenges experienced, as well as the opportunities and resources available to our students and to our faculty, they ebb and flow over the course of a lifetime. Dynamic. Likewise, the student-teacher relationship is dynamic. And the Culture of Care pillars, they can be upheld in many ways that authentically honor the dignity of the student and the instructor while maintaining that academic rigor and promoting student success. Each of us on this panel is a very different person. All of our personalities are different. Our perspectives are different, and our available resources are different. Yet we all love our students, and we embrace and embody culture of care in uniquely different ways. One person may be warm, fuzzy, and outwardly exuberant in demonstrating their nurturing side. Another may come across as the kind-hearted, tough-loving type, and another opens with communications of strictness and then flexes based on student needs. One may have very pliable work-personal life boundaries, and another may have more clearly defined work-personal life boundaries. Thus, truly authentic culture of care examples should be as unique and diverse as our faculty and our students. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Harper. So question 3 is for Darla and Chris. Building rapport is one strategy for being there for students. How do you build rapport with your students?
Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all here today. I'll go ahead and start off. For me, building rapport begins in week 1 in that first introduction post. As you read through those posts, you can look for things that you have in common with one another instead of the differences. For example, I like to see where students are from. I lived all over the country and internationally, so it's always really interesting to me to see where they're coming from. Also, maybe they have a common interest or a hobby. I was a soccer mom, so I tend to, migrate toward the soccer people in my classroom. And I love to travel, so I always tend to ask students about their favorite travel destination, which is really fun because a lot of times they'll share pictures of recent trips with me. And that travel question I have found really is impactful, and it's really creating an icebreaker, because I don't know about you, but when I was a student, I felt like the professors were way up here and I was way down there, and so that kind of removes that intimidation factor from the very first week of class. And then I've also found that rapport just naturally develops over time. I'm really fortunate because I tend to have students in consecutive courses throughout my program. And so that rapport just gets strengthened every single time I have a student. And so I really try to make a point when I'm in the discussions, when I recognize a student, to just let them know, hey, it's really great to have you in class again. I think you were in my class 2 terms ago. And I've got to tell you, students are usually really shocked that I remembered that. I don't have the best memory because I am getting older, but it's just really fascinating that they just are so, it makes them feel really good, for lack of a better word. And it really strengthens that rapport with them. And I think it helps them feel valued that I remembered them. I'm not saying I get it right every time, but I do try to remember my students. And I think if you try that little tactic, it might help. And having a strong rapport, I can't tell you how important that is for helping students, especially when they hit a roadblock. So I wanted to kind of share a story about that with you today, about a student of mine named Ashton. And I did get her permission to share her story because it is quite personal. But Ashton had been in several of my courses, and I just had her a term or 2 ago. And she reached out, and I could tell she was not herself. She reached out and shared she was going through a really serious health crisis that centered on a high-risk pregnancy. She had had several high-risk pregnancies, and One didn't go so well, and one ended up with a very premature infant that needed a lot of health care, of course. And so she was just feeling very overwhelmed, plus physically sick. And I said, hey, I get it. I had 2 high-risk pregnancies myself. Not something I would normally share with most students, but I felt like that at that point, it might help her to know that I really did kind of get what she was going through. And so once I shared that, we started connecting several times a week, sometimes at least once a week, just to check in and see how she was doing. So I asked her recently, I said, how did that go? And, so she shared, that just she had decided, she thought she was going to have to put school on pause while she was navigating this really high risk pregnancy. And she decided to stick it out. And the reason she was a little bit nervous about, she was afraid that her professors might think she's making excuses if she needed extra time. Or I said, oh, please don't worry about that. We're here. We've got you. And so she stuck it out. She did extremely well in the class. We connected lots of times. We have shared a lot of fun stories about our kids and different things in our emails and discussion boards. And she not only finished the class on time without any late work, she was a top performer in the class. So that really speaks to her resilience. But I think having that rapport gave her the comfort level to tell me what was going on. And if they don't tell us, we don't know what's going on. So once we know, we can implement strategies to support them. So she's doing really great. I checked in with her last week, and her pregnancy is great, and she's doing wonderful, and she's really glad she stuck it out. So thank you for letting me share that.
Great. Okay. So I mentioned Clifford calls the students and talk about building rapport. But then his interactions with them change their world, right? And sometimes other people's worlds. An example was where, for example, he had a student who had been justice involved, and the student had, I'm not, going into details, but the students had struggled with his education, partly because he was still dealing with legal matters, right? And Clifford, instead of just saying, oh, I'm so sorry, right? Clifford, when he heard this, decided to say, hey, what can we do? We can do something with this. And started a whole program of meeting the needs of open access online university students who are formerly justice involved, and specifically supporting students in those conditions. It's just an example of him turning a need into a joy and into making a difference. To him, this was fun stuff. He was so excited about it. And I've shared this slide here where he and several other great faculty members presented about it at the most recent TLC conference. And their presentation won the Vanguard Award for being one of the best presentations of the conference. So as it should have, because it was amazing. Just because of a little thing, because Clifford made a connection with a student and decided, hey, let's do this. A couple more examples. Now, these are kind of extreme examples. There was a movie when I was a kid. If you're old enough, you might remember An Officer and a Gentleman, in which Richard Gere plays a cadet named Mayo. And I don't know if cadet's the right word, sorry. But anyway, he was going for the record for the obstacle course at the very end of their training. And everybody was cheering him on, go Mayo, go Mayo, and he was going to set the record. But then there was this other student who could never get over this wall, Seeger. And you've seen videos where the kid, right, stops and helps. The other kid falls, and the kid who's going to win the race stops and goes back and helps the kid who falls. This movie's about that, where Mayo, spoiler alert, he stops running because getting Seeger over that wall was more important than setting any record. To me, this is how Clifford lived. He was accomplishing incredible things in his life. He was going to write a biography of this great writer that he loved. But to him, stopping and helping somebody get over that wall so that they could pass their training was more important than any accomplishments that he might have gotten on his own. It was the accomplishments that he helped others achieve that mattered more. There was this movie I highly recommend called Not One Less that came out in the early 2000s, which is about the same principle. It's this school in rural China, and this young teacher who's, just maybe barely 20 years old herself. And this one student of hers, this little boy, is expected by his family to go find work in the city and ends up lost. Spoiler alert, but she gives up everything to find this kid. And it's a very inspiring story. And to her, it's like, that kid is more important than anything else. And to me, that's the extreme example, but the embodiment of the cultural care that I saw in my dear friend, Clifford Blizzard. So I just wanted to share those examples. And I know that they're kind of over the top examples of building rapport and making a difference, but that's what is the North Star to me. I want to be like Clifford and these other people, Mayo and that Chinese teacher. So thank you.
I appreciate that. So question 4 is for everybody, for all panelists. Connecting with students is one way in which you can extend the culture of care to your online classroom. In what ways do each of you connect with your students? I'll pick somebody. Don't make me do it. Holly.
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to go first. Yeah, I have a great example that is along these lines. So I had a student who disclosed some information, very personal information, and I think that it's very easy for us to kind of think of ourselves, put ourselves in a vacuum. You know, we're the educators. That's not my job. It's not my job to reach out to a student who may be having an issue with her pregnancy or maybe formerly incarcerated, right? But we really want to think about working with students in a very holistic manner, which means that we need to think about their social and emotional development, also the phase of life that they're in. So I had this student share this very, very sad story. And so I sent her a little note and I asked her if she would like me to do a CARES report, because UAGC has CARES resources that may be able to help her in a different way, something other than accessibility issues or mental health, but something that was going to really support her development at the place that she was at. And she sent an email back that said, I've never had anybody acknowledge my pain, and I've never had anyone offer to be supportive in this particular area for me. And so that was such a powerful moment for me to not only be able to teach the student and educate her, but pinpoint one area that was clearly neglected, and at least was able to provide support and resources for this student in a way she had never experienced before. And I know that's not necessarily going to happen with all students, but I think as educators and online educators, we need to sort of train ourselves and think about that social emotional component that may be right around the corner, and that may be able to make such a huge difference, not just for our students' professional lives, for their careers, for their education, but for their personal development, right? For their holistic development as a human being. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Holly. And she and I are both talking about holistic classroom management. So I'll go next. I look for ways of creating connections, caring connections, and to interact with students holistically from the very beginning. So I set the tone from the beginning by posting a welcome video with images and quotes and book titles and song titles and favorite scholarly authors and more. And to acknowledge that I'm a whole person who values the unique perspective each learner brings to our class. And while the video is about me, it's not really just about me. 3 out of the 5 pillars include the word diverse. And because I know my students are diverse, I include song titles from many genres that have messages in them. I include authors from a variety of backgrounds, wisdom quotes from different cultures, and I include a picture of me standing beside the World Peace Gong in New Delhi, which has symbols of 10 different religions. And so then when a student mentions in the poster introduction forum that they're Muslim, I greet them with Assalamu alaikum. I have a second video of me welcoming them so they can hear my voice, honoring them, and see me smiling at them. And then, of course, the educational videos and images I select throughout the course model diverse perspectives and role models. Like many of us, I keep track of each student's preferred name, career goals, interesting tidbits, and I connect them to relevant resources and even professional organizations and tailor subsequent discussion replies to them. I share announcements and posts that include resources that speak to their holistic wellness. I care about their wellness. Tips for eye health because they're spending many hours in front of screens. Exercises to keep their wrists and hands healthy because they're keyboarding a lot. Tips for helping children manage anxiety and grief. All, of course, with the appropriate disclaimers, right? That this information is for educational purposes, not intended to diagnose or treat any medical condition, and that before engaging in any health-related activity, they should consult with their qualified medical professional. But they appreciate that information. Again, it's not just academic information. I care about them as whole individuals. I celebrate with them when they announce new baby arrivals, new jobs, and other positive life events. I post thank you for your service badges and images expressing my condolences when appropriate. And I use a lot of color to bring positive energy into the classroom because some of them are coming to the classroom tired and drained. And so I want to infuse them with the energy they need to be successful and to be happy in that space. And we live in an emoji world. So I find strategic use of appropriate emojis is the written equivalent of voice performance that we learned about in our Culture of Care training. And based on what students share with us, we all know there are a myriad of direct and indirect ways to promote learning, to reinforce their motivation for persisting, and to encourage them when they're facing challenges and to celebrate their successes. And sometimes we don't even know we're encouraging them when we do. I recall one student who shared she was caring for her mother who had recently had a stroke. She just did not have the energy or bandwidth to do much with her assignments. And she was thinking of dropping out, but she just kept logging into the class because she was curious to see what I was posting in the discussion forum and announcements. So classroom management matters. Long story short, she did end up finishing the course and again, being a top performer. I have students tell me all the time that they talk with their family and colleagues and loved ones about information I share in the announcements and in the posts, which brings us back to there being no one correct way to do cultural care. All of the ABCs are interrelated, and all of them strengthen our connection with our students, and the way each of us manifests each ABC will be unique to us. But and at the same time, while we cannot be all things to all people, we can all find our own authentic way that comes from a space of genuine care and genuine love. Thank you.
Thanks for that.
That was, oh, sorry. You want me to? Okay, I'll make it quick. Yolanda, that was wonderful. I love those examples and the care I feel from you. I want to share a quick example from another friend named Eric Moss, who's an associate faculty here. And I wish everybody could see Eric's poster introduction form. He just has so much fun with it. Because why not? It's the introduction form. He doesn't just talk about the discipline. He goes in and he talks about his favorite movies and what the students said reminded him and he loves old movies. So he's always posting a clip from some old film like the one from Home Alone, or he'll post a song that he loves, just like Yolanda was sharing, just like that holistic connection that is made that just makes the class fun, that makes students want to reach out to him, not just know they can, but actually want to. And that's the kind of connection that that establishes that culture of care in the classroom. I had a student call me not long ago, and she was going through all kinds of stuff. And at the first feeling I had was like, oh my gosh, because I was going through some stuff and I was just like, I don't know if I could do this. And, just emotionally. And then I just went along for the ride. And wow, by the end, that student not only passed the class, but is about to graduate and was actually scheduled to present here at the Culture of Care conference. because she, like Seeger and the Officer and a Gentleman, got over a wall that most people, might recoil from. So these connections that you established can really make a difference in someone's life. And the last thing I want to share was Maya Angelou quote, which is something like, people won't remember what you say or what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Thanks, everybody. I don't know about you all, but I have goosebumps from some of these little stories that have been shared today. Dan, do we still have time? I'm kind of watching the clock. I just want to make sure we have.
Yeah, we have, looks to me like we have 5 minutes till, okay, so it looks like maybe we have 5 minutes till the end of the session complete. So.
Okay. Well, I'll try to share very quickly then on how I connect. One of the ways I connect easily is I'm a military veteran, and I tend to have a lot of military students. So that's a great way, and I love to hear what they're up to, and definitely know how hard it is to complete classes when you're on a mission, working around the clock hours and etc. But another great way I like to connect is with students that have lived in the same areas. So I had a student recently, I had several classes with him because he was about to graduate. And his name's Ryan, and he did say I could share a little bit about his story. He lives in St. Louis, and that's where I attended university and landed my first job in healthcare. Small world, as it turns out, we worked for the same hospital in St. Louis at Mercy Healthcare. And so we just developed this really strong connection. We also really love talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. Sorry, they're not your team, guys out there. And food, of course, which if you've never had St. Louis toasted raviolis, you got to try those sometime. So we just built this really close bonded connection. And he started sharing with me that he was struggling with his confidence, even though he was like a top performing student. Those tend to be the ones that are most anxious about their coursework and everything. And so it was just really great to see how his confidence was built. So I asked him to share a few things, and he said just having that St. Louis connection really helped him make me more approachable, which I hope I'm approachable to all my students. But I think sometimes, again, students have this fear of reaching out to their professors, which I think UAGC does a great job of kind of dispelling that myth. So, because we had that connection, he was frequently sending me messages, sometimes not even course related, but it was really great to work with him. And he was anxious about a lot of things, and recently he graduated, and he just let me know that he got into his first pick of grad school, because I told him, you have got to go into grad school. It would be a shame if you didn't. And he's like, I don't know, I've been doing this for a long time. I said, trust me, it'll be worth it. So he just got into grad school. He's taking his certification exam for our profession on Friday, which I know he's going to pass with flying colors. So he just wanted to reiterate that just feeling valued and having a connection with your professor made all the difference. It made him participate more in discussions, and it made him feel at ease reaching out to me, even with the most simplest of questions. So thanks, everybody. Please let us know if you have any questions. And it was great being with all of you today.
So I was premature in how much time I told you. We have a little more than I thought. Looks like we have, we're closing out at 5:55 after the hour. So we have a couple minutes, and then we'll head into Colin asking questions. One thing I noticed that's just a theme here is that it seems like what y'all are saying is we should be trying to find some point of connection with the student, any point of connection, whether it's sports or prior military or love of music or anything like that. Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I guess we'll turn it over to Colin. Do you have, well, let's ask the audience first does the audience have any questions or comments that they would like to make? And Colin will take over from there.
And Holly does have an infographic that she's going to share.
I'll pop that up right now.
And so I did just mention within the chat, if people have questions, they can pose them there. That's fine. Or if they want to raise their hand and come on. So it looks like we do have one question in there that we can kick this off with. Do you have any strategies if you struggle to find a point of connection? I guess that's for anyone in the panel.
I do. So I was raised when there was a popular commercial on TV that said, different is good. And I don't even know what it was advertising, but I remember that slogan. And so I celebrate. So if I had a student once that posted that they were, I think, a hunter. Well, I don't hunt. But I found a way to celebrate that with them, because if they thought it was important enough for them to, and that much important in their identity, I wanted to celebrate. I recently had a student who's challenged with one of the assignments because she's in an Amish community. And she said, I'm blessed to have a computer at all to do this. I celebrated that. I'm like, oh, wow, that's amazing. Please take an opportunity to share your expertise, and we'll work around and we'll find a way to get through this assignment and engage here. So there's always a way. So similarities are great ways to connect, but if you show love and enthusiasm and excitement about the differences too, that's connection, because connection is not about the content, it's about the heart.
I think that's a really important question, especially as we head into some politically challenging times in the next 6 months or so. I think that we need to model for our students that how to interact in appropriate ways. And so that means making a connection. And if there is something we disagree with, maybe that's not the route we're going to go with. We're going to make a connection on a different level, like the example that you gave, Yolanda, but also modeling that, oh, I grew up in had a really different experience, but I really appreciate hearing your perspective and thank you for sharing. Modeling how to navigate people that are very different from you and value systems that are very different from you. I mean, it's something that I think we need to continually work on, not just as students, but as a society, in my personal opinion. So I just wanted to share that piece.
I'll add to just something you said, Holly, reminded me of a picture I saw of a guy standing on the side of the road. He was holding up a sign that said, just because you disagree doesn't mean you have to hate each other. And I think that's an important thing. Going back to Dr. Harper's point, I think that's a really good point, that you don't actually have to have a thing in common with the person, but if you can have a connection through it, whether you're just talking about, like with my kids, I'm not interested in the things they're interested in, but I'll make a point to talk to them about it just because there's a connection there. So that makes a lot of sense.
And expressing interest in that thing that may be different, I think creates that connection. Wow, I never thought about it that way. Tell me more about how you came to understand that. What do you know about it?
Right, because it's an interest in them, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's such a critical skill set that I think you tend to want to pick one side or the other, but this is about discourse and about learning and discussion and growing, and that and modeling those sorts of conversations, I think, are so critical for our world right now.
That's exactly right, and in critical thinking, and that point, as Yolanda was saying, different is good, right? And that when people are different, that actually should spark curiosity, and it's not about converting anybody; it's about learning from and developing it's not just what you think, it's how you think, and we're learning together about principles for critical thinking, and I think which include understanding different points of view and using the principle of charity in and interpreting what other people say. So, love it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for our panelists, your time, insights. This was a great way to kick things off in one of these first sessions. Really, really great. I think it went well. And thank you to all the attendees for joining us. We do hope you found the conversation inspiring. So I'm going to post in the chat here some links to next sessions in case you want to figure out where to go next to make sure you get the most out of what we have coming. Still plenty of good things ahead. So with that, on the behalf of the Department of Behavioral Sciences and the UAGC, thanks everybody. Have a great rest of the day. We'll probably see you again some more.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Have a great day.